Dr. Lucas Harper sat at his desk, staring at the glowing screens in front of him. His fingers lightly tapped the keyboard as he analyzed data from the most recent experiment. It was just another quiet night on the research station, tucked away, on a distant planet. Lucas had been on this mission for months. He was a biologist studying alien flora and fauna, away from Earth and the world he knew. The silence of the station was only interrupted by the hum of the life support system, a constant reminder of how alone he truly was. The isolation didn't bother him. He was used to it. But tonight something felt different. The air felt heavier, as if something was about to change. His concentration was broken by a faint sound, the soft rustle of footsteps behind him. Turning around, Lucas froze. Standing in the doorway of his small room was an alien woman, her large eyes locked on him. Her name was Erythra. He had seen her before, briefly, from a distance. She was part of a race of beings that had visited Earth years ago but never stayed. They were intelligent, powerful, and curious about humanity, but Lucas had never expected to meet one of them face to face. She stood there, her long silver hair flowing around her shoulders. Her skin was a shade of pale blue, almost iridescent under the light. She wore a simple outfit, a fitted bodysuit, of dark material, designed to blend with the surroundings of her planet. It was nothing like the clothing humans wore, but it was striking in its simplicity. Erythra didn't speak. Instead, she just stared at Lucas, her eyes studying him intently. He felt his heart race. She was beautiful, in a way that was otherworldly, but there was something unsettling about her presence, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. "Erythra?" Lucas asked, trying to sound calm. His voice was steady, but inside he was anything but. He had no idea why she was here, or what she wanted. She took a step forward, her movements graceful and fluid, as if she were floating rather than walking. There was a confidence in her step, a power that was hard to ignore. She stopped right in front of him, her eyes still fixed on his. "Lucas Harper," she finally spoke, her voice melodic but strong. It had an odd quality to it, as if it was not quite the language of her people but something close to it. "You are different." He didn't know how to respond to that. Different? What did she mean by that? Before he could ask, she reached out, gently touching his arm. Her touch was light, almost delicate, but there was a strange warmth that spread through his skin, almost as if she were trying to connect with him on a deeper level. Her eyes softened, and she seemed to study him, with even more intensity. "I wanted to understand you," she said, her words hesitant as if she was struggling to explain herself. "You're fascinating. Your species, your emotions, they are unlike ours." Lucas felt his pulse quicken. This was no ordinary visit. This wasn't just an alien who came to observe or study him from afar. Erythra was here standing in front of him, looking at him like she was intrigued. "I don't understand," Lucas said, his voice quiet. "What do you want from me?" Erythra didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped back slightly and glanced at the bed behind him. Lucas followed her gaze, confused. Then, without a word, she walked over and climbed onto the bed, sitting down with a grace that only made her presence more striking. Lucas blinked. "What are you doing?" "I want to learn," she said simply. "I need to understand more. Your species, your connection with one another." Lucas stood frozen in place. His mind raced. What was going on? Why was she acting like this? This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. He had read the reports, studied the protocols. This wasn't any of it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Erythra sat on his bed, looking up at him with those captivating eyes. She seemed perfectly at ease, like this was the most natural thing in the world. "You don't knock," Lucas finally said, a nervous laugh escaping him. His attempt at humor fell flat, but it was all he could manage in the face of the surreal situation. Erythra tilted her head slightly. "Knock? I do not understand." I have only ever observed you from a distance. You seemed distant. That answer made Lucas's heart skip a beat. He had been isolated for so long, working in solitude, but he didn't realize how much he had been observed by the aliens. Erythra's curiosity was genuine, but it also felt invasive, as if his privacy had never mattered. I'm not sure what you mean, Lucas said, taking a tentative step toward her. Why are you in my room, my bed? I'm here to understand, Erythra repeated. I want to learn about humans, about you. I need to connect. I've watched you from afar, but now I want more. Your emotions, your warmth, they are things my people do not understand. Her words lingered in the air, and Lucas felt a strange shiver crawl down his spine. He was a scientist, trained to stay calm in even the most chaotic situations. But this was different. This was beyond his training, beyond his understanding. I'm not sure what you're asking for, Lucas said, his voice unsteady. But this isn't the way to learn about us. Erythra's gaze softened. She didn't seem to understand why this was a problem. To her, it was simply the next step in her exploration. She wasn't aware of the boundaries humans placed on personal space, on relationships. For a moment, Lucas considered walking away. He could leave, go to the control room, do something, anything to escape the tension in the room. But something stopped him. Erythra wasn't just an alien visitor. There was something about her, something he couldn't explain, that made him stay. And so he remained standing there as Erythra sat on his bed, waiting for something, he wasn't sure what, for her to reveal. The days after Erythra's unexpected visit were strange, to say the least. Lucas tried to focus on his work, but every time he sat at his desk, the image of the alien woman sitting on his bed haunted him. He couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, both in his mind and in the atmosphere around the research station. Erythra didn't leave him alone. Each night, like clockwork, she appeared at his door, walking with her usual grace and quiet confidence. She never knocked, never asked for permission. She simply entered and made herself at home. At first, Lucas thought he could ignore it, tell her to leave, but every time he tried, she would just look at him with those piercing eyes, and something inside him would change. Her presence was magnetic. He didn't understand it. He knew she was an alien, from a completely different world, yet there was a connection between them, something he couldn't explain. One evening, as he sat in his small kitchen area, preparing a meal, he heard the familiar sound of her footsteps behind him. Without turning around, Lucas sighed, resigned to the fact that this had become his new reality. Erythra, he said, his voice tired but not unfriendly. You don't have to keep coming by. I've told you I need my space. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, Lucas felt her approach, felt the warmth of her presence near him. Then, she spoke softly. I don't understand your need for space, Lucas. We, my people, do not have such boundaries. Her voice was calm, yet there was an intensity, too, that caught his attention. I want to learn, to understand you better. Lucas set down the knife he was holding and turned to face her. There was a softness in her eyes that made him hesitate. She was sincere, but also clueless in a way that made him feel uncomfortable. How could he explain to her something so simple? Something that seemed to be second nature to him but was entirely foreign to her. I'm human, he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. We value privacy, boundaries, personal space. It's how we function. Erythra tilted her head, as if considering his words, but there was no sign of understanding in her eyes. She stepped closer, her bare feet silent on the cold floor. But we are so similar, Lucas. Don't you see? I feel what you feel. At least a little. I want to understand everything about you. Her closeness made him nervous, and he took a step back, his heart pounding in his chest. This wasn't normal. This wasn't how he expected first contact with an alien species to be. The lines between professional and personal were blurring in a way that left him feeling exposed. Understanding is one thing, Lucas said, trying to maintain some level of control. But what you're doing, it's not just about learning anymore, is it? Arithra didn't answer right away. She simply stared at him, and in that moment, Lucas felt something shift in the air. There was no doubt in his mind that she wasn't just curious about humans, she was curious about him, and that realization made him uneasy. I need to be close to you, Lucas, Arithra said finally, her voice quiet, almost pleading. I have studied humans, observed them from a distance, but you are different. I feel drawn to you. The words sent a chill down his spine. He didn't know what to make of it. Part of him wanted to pull away to tell her this was all wrong. But another part, a part he didn't fully understand, felt the pull as well. She was unlike anyone he had ever met. Alien, yes, but also familiar in a strange way. Why me? He asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. Why not anyone else? Arithra's gaze softened, and she stepped even closer, until there was barely any space between them. Because you are kind. You are open in ways that others are not. I have watched you, Lucas, and I see things in you that I do not see in others of your kind. Lucas felt his heart race as she reached out, gently touching his arm. Her skin was soft, almost too soft. He could feel a warmth radiating from her, a heat that made his pulse quicken. I don't know if I can handle this, Lucas said, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know how to deal with this connection. You're not like anyone I've ever known. Arithra's hand stayed on his arm, her fingers just grazing his skin. You don't need to understand, you just need to feel. The words hit him hard like a punch to the gut. He had always prided himself on his logical, scientific mind. Feelings, connections. Those were things that complicated everything. But here in front of him stood Arithra, and everything he thought he knew about relationships, about emotions, felt like it was being thrown out the window. I can't just feel, Lucas said, his voice shaking. There has to be more to it than that. You can't just take something from me. Arithra looked at him, her eyes filled with something that resembled sadness. I am not taking from you, Lucas. I only want to give. I want to share. But I need you to allow me. Lucas swallowed hard. There was a part of him that wanted to believe, her, that wanted to let go and let this strange, powerful connection unfold. But the scientist in him, the one who had spent years analyzing patterns, studying alien behavior, couldn't ignore the warning bells ringing in his mind. You don't understand, he said, stepping back again. This isn't how it works for us. I can't just let someone into my life, especially not like this. It's too much, too fast. Arithra's expression softened, and for a moment, she seemed almost vulnerable. It was a side of her he hadn't seen before, and it made his heart ache. I am sorry, she said quietly. I did not mean to make you uncomfortable. I only wanted to understand. For the first time since their strange encounter began, Lucas felt a flicker of sympathy. Maybe it was the honesty in her voice, or maybe it was the way she looked at him, like she truly didn't know any better. But for the first time, he wasn't sure how to push her away. You need to understand more, Lucas said softly. But I can't help you the way you want. Arithra looked down, her shoulders slumping slightly. Then I will wait, Lucas. I will learn from you in the way you want me to. As she turned to leave, Lucas watched her go, unsure of what to do next. He had no idea what the future held or what this strange emotional bond would mean for them both. But he couldn't deny that something had shifted, and no matter how hard he tried, he wasn't sure he could ignore it for long. The days that followed were filled with a strange silence. Lucas found himself constantly thinking about Arithra, wondering what had drawn her to him, what made her so fascinated by humans. He couldn't stop replaying her words in his mind. I feel drawn to you. Her presence was a constant in his life now, though she had started to respect his need for space. She would still appear at night, but it was no longer in the way it had been before. She didn't just climb into his bed without warning. Instead, she would sit at a distance, often just talking to him about her world, her race, and the things she had learned. But the more she shared, the more Lucas realized just how much he didn't know. Erythra's people were not like humans, at all. They were a species of explorers, scattered across the galaxy, living in isolation for most of their existence. They were intelligent, calculating, and driven by logic, yet they lacked something humans had in abundance: emotion. "I've watched you," Erythra told him one evening as they sat together in his small room, her eyes fixed on the stars outside. "I've observed humans for a long time. I don't understand feelings." She paused and turned her gaze to him. "You, Lucas, you are different. You express them so freely, but I don't know how to connect." Lucas felt a pang of sympathy. He had always been surrounded by emotion, his life filled with relationships and experiences that involved love, friendship, and pain. To him it was just part of being human. But to Erythra it was a mystery, something she desperately wanted to understand. "Feelings are complicated," Lucas replied, unsure of how to help her. "Humans don't always know how to deal with them either. But that's what makes us human." Erythra looked down, her fingers tracing the edge of the table. "I do not know how to feel them. How can I learn? How can I be more like you?" Lucas stared at her, realizing just how different her life had been. Her species had evolved without the complexities of emotions. They viewed them as a weakness, something that could cloud judgment. But Erythra was asking him to help her understand something that, to him, was second nature. "I don't think you can just become like us," he said gently. "It's not something you can learn in a few days or weeks. It's part of who we are." Erythra's expression hardened, the sadness in her eyes deepening. "Then I will never understand. I will never be able to connect. I will never be able to feel like you do." She paused, then added quietly, "But I want to." Lucas saw the sincerity in her eyes and couldn't help but feel a deep sympathy for her. She was so isolated in her understanding of the universe, so lonely in a way he couldn't quite explain. Her desire to connect, to feel, was genuine. She wasn't trying to manipulate him. She was simply searching for something she had never known. "Erythra," Lucas said softly, "maybe you don't need to become like us. Maybe you just need to experience it." Erythra tilted her head, confusion evident in her expression. "Experience? But how?" Lucas wasn't sure how to explain it, but something inside him urged him to try. Feelings aren't just about understanding them intellectually. They're about living them. They're about moments, connections, and time spent with others. It's not something you can learn from books or lectures. It's something you feel when you allow yourself to. She absorbed his words slowly, her eyes distant as if she were processing something deep inside her. "And you think I can feel them too?" Her voice was small, uncertain. Lucas didn't know how to answer, but he couldn't lie to her. "I think you can. But it takes time, Erythra. And it takes trust." The weight of his words seemed to hang in the air, and for a long time neither of them spoke. Lucas wasn't sure where to go from here. He wasn't an expert on relationships, let alone intergalactic ones, and he certainly wasn't prepared to teach an alien woman about feelings. But over the next few days, their conversations grew deeper. Erythra started to ask more questions, not just about humans, but about Lucas himself, his past, his experiences, his family. She was trying to understand him, to know what made him tick. One evening, after a particularly long discussion about the human concept of love, Erythra asked, "Lucas, do you think you can love me?" The question caught him off guard. He had never thought of Erythra in that way, at least not consciously. She was different, and his feelings for her had always been complicated by her alien nature, by the barrier between their species. "I don't know," Lucas said honestly. "I'm not sure what love is for someone like you, but I know I care about you. You're not just an alien to me. You're someone I've come to understand, a person I want to help." Erythra's expression softened, and for the first time, Lucas saw a flicker of emotion in her eyes. It was brief, fleeting, but it was there. A kind of warmth, like a glimmer of hope. "I think," she said slowly, "I think that's what I need. Not to be like you, but to understand you. To learn what it means to be close." Lucas nodded. He didn't have the answers, but he could see that they were on the right path. The connection between them, though complicated and uncertain, was real. It wasn't love. Not yet. But it was something important, something worth exploring. "I'll help you, Erythra," Lucas said, his voice steady. "But this is something we'll both have to figure out together." She smiled softly, the first real smile he had ever seen from her. It was small, almost shy, but it made Lucas's heart swell with something he couldn't quite name. Maybe it was hope, or maybe it was something else entirely. "I'll wait for you," Erythra whispered. "I'll wait to understand." And in that moment, Lucas knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges they faced, they would face them together. The tension between Lucas and Erythra continued to grow, but it wasn't just the strange connection that was changing everything. The mission, too, was taking a dangerous turn. Lucas had spent months on this research station, studying alien life forms and conducting experiments, but all of it suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the new reality he found himself in. His bond with Erythra, although still confusing, had become the most important thing in his life. But the closer they became, the more questions arose. One evening, Lucas was sitting at his desk, reviewing data on a new species he had recently discovered, when the door slid open. He didn't have to look up to know who it was. Erythra's presence, though silent, was unmistakable. She stood in the doorway, watching him with those intense alien eyes. Her expression was unreadable, and for the first time in weeks, Lucas felt a sense of unease wash over him. He had gotten used to her, to the way she would appear uninvited, but tonight felt different. "Erythra," he said, setting his work aside. "What's wrong?" "I've been thinking," Erythra said softly, stepping into the room, "about everything you've told me, about emotions and connections. I'm starting to understand, but it's not enough." Lucas frowned, sensing that there was more to her words than just confusion. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she continued, walking toward him, her steps deliberate and calm, "that my people, they don't understand. They don't see what you see. I've been trying to explain to them what I've learned, but they won't listen. They think I'm wasting time. They think your species is weak, driven only by emotions." A chill ran down Lucas's spine. He knew that Erythra's people were intelligent, but he had never realized just how different their views on emotions were. If what she was saying was true, her people might see humanity as something to control or manipulate. "Erythra, what are you saying?" he asked, his voice tight with concern. "Are you telling me your people are planning something? Is that why you're here?" Erythra didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took another step closer, her eyes never leaving his. "I don't know what they plan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I do know that they are watching me. They're watching us." The room suddenly felt smaller, the weight of her words sinking in. The walls seemed to close in on him, and the hum of the life support system became deafening. Lucas had always known that Erythra's people were powerful, but he hadn't fully understood how much influence they had, how much they could potentially affect his world. "How long has this been going on?" Lucas asked, his mind racing. He was torn between disbelief and the unsettling reality that the aliens were already thinking about how they could control humanity. "Since the beginning," Erythra admitted. "Since I first arrived. They sent me to learn, but not just to learn about you. They wanted to understand your weaknesses, your emotions." The revelation hit him hard. He had trusted Erythra, but now he was questioning everything. She had been sent here not just to observe, but to gather information, to study humans as if they were a species to be exploited. "I don't understand," Lucas said, struggling to keep his voice steady. I thought you wanted to connect with me. You said you were different, that you wanted to understand us. Was that a lie? Erythra flinched, the pain evident in her eyes. It wasn't a lie, she said quickly. But I don't have a choice, Lucas. You think we're the same, but we're not. My people are bound by duty, by a code I can't escape, and right now, I'm torn between two worlds. Lucas was silent for a moment, trying to process everything she had just told him. It felt like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. He had always thought of their relationship as something that transcended boundaries, but now he was questioning if it was just part of a larger plan. Then what do we do? He asked finally, his voice strained. What happens now? Erythra looked at him, her expression softening. I don't know, Lucas, but I'm not asking you to trust me anymore. I'm asking you to trust yourself. You have to make the choice, whether you believe in me or not. Lucas felt a weight in his chest, a mix of frustration and uncertainty. How could he trust her now? How could he trust anything? The lines between right and wrong, truth and manipulation had become blurred. I don't know if I can, he admitted quietly. I don't know if I can believe in this anymore. Erythra nodded, a sorrowful look crossing her face. I understand, but please, Lucas. I'm not like them. I'm not like my people. I only wanted to learn. I never wanted to hurt you. For a moment, they stood there, the space between them filled with the unspoken tension of what had been revealed. Lucas wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that this was real, that their bond wasn't just part of some larger scheme. But the more he thought about her people, the more he realized how deeply ingrained their views were. I need time, Lucas said at last, his voice firm. I need time to think, to figure out what this means, what it means for us. Erythra didn't protest. Instead, she stepped back, her face unreadable once again. I'll give you time. But remember, Lucas, no matter what happens, I will never stop trying to understand you. As she turned and walked out of the room, Lucas stood frozen, his mind spinning with the weight of her words. The future seemed uncertain now, and the path ahead was clouded with doubt. He had always prided himself on his logic, his ability to make decisions based on reason. But this was different. His heart, his emotions were now part of the equation, and he wasn't sure if he was ready to face them. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty, and Lucas found himself caught between two worlds. On one side was Erythra, the alien woman he had come to care for in ways he didn't fully understand. On the other side were the harsh realities of her people's intentions, and the growing tension that seemed to hang over the research station like a storm cloud. Lucas spent his time in his room, pacing back and forth, trying to sort through his feelings. The more he thought about Erythra, the more he realized that there was something real between them. Her desire to understand, to connect, wasn't just a mission. It was personal. She wasn't like the cold, calculating species he had imagined her to be. She was searching for something deeper, something more human. But could he trust her? Could he trust that her feelings were genuine, or was she just another pawn in a larger game played by her people? The questions weighed heavily on his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The station's commander had already started making plans for the next phase of the mission, and Lucas knew that if he didn't make a decision soon, everything he had come to care about could be lost. One evening, as the sun set behind the distant mountains of the alien planet, Lucas found himself standing in the doorway of his room, looking out at the stars. The vast emptiness of space stretched out before him, and for the first time, he felt small, insignificant. Lucas? Erythra's voice interrupted his thoughts, soft and tentative. He turned to see her standing a few feet away, her usual confidence replaced by a quiet vulnerability. There was no mistaking the sadness in her eyes, and Lucas's heart ached for her. She had come so far, had given so much of herself, and yet, he could see the doubt that lingered in her gaze. I've been thinking, Erythra continued, stepping closer. I know I've asked a lot from you, more than anyone should, and I know I've caused you pain. Lucas shook his head, his voice low. You didn't cause me pain, Erythra. You didn't mean to. But everything's so complicated right now. I don't know how to deal with it. Erythra nodded, her eyes filled with understanding. I know, and I understand why you're afraid. But I need to be honest with you, Lucas. My people, they want to take control. They think that by understanding your emotions, they can manipulate them. They think that's how they will win this war they've been planning. But I'm not like them. She paused, taking a step closer until she was standing directly in front of him. I've learned from you. I've learned that emotions are not something to control. They're something to feel. And for the first time in my life, I understand what it means to be vulnerable, to let someone in. That's what you've taught me. Lucas felt a lump form in his throat. He had known that Erythra's feelings for him were different from what her people might expect, but hearing her say it out loud made everything seem more real. She wasn't just learning about human emotions, she was learning about herself. And in the process, she was teaching him something too. Erythra, Lucas started, but his voice faltered. She reached out, placing her hand on his arm. You don't have to say anything. I just want you to know that I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because I want to help, because I want to be with you, and I want to protect you from the people who would use you. Lucas looked at her, seeing the sincerity in her eyes. He had never seen her like this before. Vulnerable, honest, and open. The walls she had built around herself were coming down, and he realized that she was offering him a choice, a chance to decide the future for both of them. I don't know if I can trust your people, Erythra, Lucas said quietly, but I trust you. I don't know if that's enough, but it's all I have. Erythra smiled softly, her eyes glistening with emotion. That's enough, Lucas. More than enough. They stood there for a long moment, the quiet of the room wrapping around them like a blanket. Lucas didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone anymore. They would face whatever came next together. We need to stop them, Lucas said suddenly, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. We can't let your people manipulate us, Erythra. We need to find a way to make them understand that humans are not something to be controlled. Erythra nodded, her expression hardening with resolve. I've already been trying, but now I'm not alone in this fight. Lucas felt a surge of determination. For the first time in weeks, the fog of uncertainty started to lift. He had a plan, a way forward, and it didn't involve running away. It involved standing up, fighting for what was right, and making sure that humanity wasn't just some experiment to be studied. Then we fight, Lucas said, his voice steady. We fight for us. Erythra took a deep breath, the weight of their shared responsibility settling between them. Together. As they stood side by side, looking out at the stars, Lucas knew that their battle had only just begun. But he also knew that they had something no one else could take from them, a connection, a bond that defied species and circumstances. They had each other, and for the first time that felt like enough. Together they would find a way to stop the war, to protect humanity, and to ensure that their bond, forged in the unlikeliest of places, would be the one thing neither of them would ever have to fight for again.